The first time I saw her, she didn't look like someone who had lost everything. Not the way people usually carry grief on their shoulders like a heavy coat. No, she stood tall in the doorway of her sprawling ivy-covered house, wrapped in a soft robe the color of rosewater, the kind that whispered luxury with every step. Her silver-streaked hair was pulled back casually, but not without care. And her eyes, God, her eyes, they looked like the kind that had seen too much and decided to hide it behind perfect posture and poise. I was just the coffee girl, a delivery driver trying to make rent. My name's Harper, 24, barista by day, struggling poet by night. That morning was cold, still damp from the rain the night before. My breath puffed out as I stepped from the car, cardboard tray in hand. I didn't expect anything, just another drop-off. Another rich neighbor wanting a triple-shot no-foam half-sweet oat latte. But the door opened before I could even ring the bell. She smiled, warm, slow, and a little amused. "You're early," she said. Her voice was low, like velvet that's been resting in cedar for years. I swallowed hard and shrugged. Didn't hit traffic. Lucky day, I guess. She took the tray from me, but her fingers brushed mine. I felt it just a second too long. Her nails were painted a deep red, and her skin was warm despite the chill. She lingered at the door, looking me over like I wasn't just a delivery, like she was seeing me. "I'm Evelyn," she said after a pause. "New around here. This house is too big for one person. But the coffee helps." "I'm Harper," I replied, and regretted how small my voice sounded. Then she laughed. A short, delicate thing. "Harper. Like the writer." "Trying to be," I said without thinking. I wanted to vanish then. What kind of person says something that corny to a woman like her? But she didn't tease. Instead, she tilted her head. "Well, Harper the writer, maybe next time you bring coffee, you can bring me something of yours to read." Next time. She wanted a next time. "I can do that," I said, my heart pounding. She nodded, and for a second her smile slipped. A shadow flickered across her expression. Sadness, maybe. Or loneliness. The kind that money and marble floors can't ever touch. She turned slightly, about to close the door, but she stopped again. "Same order tomorrow?" "Yes." She looked at me like she'd already decided something important. "Yes, but come a little later. Around 10. I like it warmer then." She closed the door gently, and I stood there on her porch, fingers still tingling from where they'd touched hers. As I walked back to my car, I didn't feel like the coffee girl anymore. Felt frozen. Like I'd just become part of something I couldn't explain yet. The next morning, I dressed like an idiot. Or maybe a fool in love. I couldn't tell the difference. I changed shirts 4 times. Ended up in a moss green sweater that brought out my eyes. Least I hope so. I spritzed perfume I couldn't afford to wear to work. And when I pulled into Evelyn's curved driveway, I parked too far from the door, just so I could walk up like I wasn't thinking about her all night. But I was. The mahogany door opened at exactly 10:01. And there she was, no robe this time. She wore high-waisted linen trousers and a cream blouse tucked in loosely. Her collar open just enough to show the faint line of a gold chain resting at her collarbone. She looked like a page from a lifestyle magazine. Rich widow, yes, but alive, and maybe waiting for me. Right on time, she said, smiling as she took the tray. Her voice had that same warm timbre, like it carried secrets and lullabies in equal measure. I aim to please. She raised an eyebrow. Do you? Blinked. Sorry, I mean yeah. As a barista. For work. She laughed again, softer this time. Relax, Harper. The way she said my name, like she was trying it on in her mouth just to feel it, made my knees slightly weak. I didn't know people could sound like that just saying a name. Evelyn turned and gestured toward the entryway. Come in. You've earned it. And I think it's time I read something of yours. Wait, she remembered. You were serious. She looked over her shoulder. I don't lie about coffee or curiosity. I stepped inside, instantly swallowed by the quiet warmth of her home. The kind of silence that smelled like leather, rosewood, and fresh-cut peonies. Every surface was clean but not empty. Her world was full of deliberate touches. Books stacked on low tables, abstract paintings in muted tones, and the faint scent of something floral I couldn't name. She led me into a sun-drenched sitting room and set the coffee down on a glass table. Sit, she said, before I intimidate you into forgetting how to breathe. Too late. I sat at the edge of her cream sofa like I didn't want to crease it. She lowered herself into the seat opposite me, one leg crossed over the other, poised and effortlessly elegant. So, she said, what do you write? I fished into my messenger bag and handed her a folded poem I'd scribbled last week. It was about light falling on kitchen tiles. Dumb, probably. Not enough for someone like her. She unfolded it slowly and read in silence. I stared at her hands. Long fingers, a ring still worn on her right hand, but not the left. When she looked up, her eyes shimmered with something too deep to name. You write like you've lived many lives, she said. I smiled awkwardly. Just the one. So far. Her smile faltered, but not in a bad way. Like I'd said something that caught her off guard. Do you always give your work to strangers? She asked. Only the ones who ask. She leaned back, watching me. You don't seem like a coffee girl, Harper. And you don't seem like someone who drinks it alone. That did it. Her expression broke. Just for a second. A flicker of pain passed over her face, then dissolved into something warmer. She reached for her cup, took a sip, and exhaled like the world made sense for a moment. I've had a lot of people knock on my door these past few weeks, she murmured. But none of them made me want to open it again. We sat in the quiet after that, just sipping coffee. I felt my heart beat faster than it should have, and I didn't know if it was because of her words or the way she was looking at me now. Like I wasn't just someone who brought her caffeine, but someone who brought her color. I'm off tomorrow, I said before I could stop myself. She raised an eyebrow. Oh, but I could still bring you coffee. If you want. Evelyn smiled, then leaned forward, elbows on her knees, voice low and gentle. I don't need the coffee tomorrow, Harper, she said. But I'd like to see you. I didn't bring coffee the next day. I brought myself. A bundle of nerves wrapped in denim and a second-hand jacket, standing at her door like I'd forgotten how to knock. Before I could raise my hand, it opened. Evelyn didn't say anything at first. She looked at me with a strange mix of surprise and certainty, like she had just opened the door to something she wasn't sure she deserved, but had been quietly wishing for. Still on time, she murmured, stepping aside. You're very dependable, Harper. This time she was barefoot. Her dark green silk blouse shimmered with every move, tucked casually into soft jeans that said she wasn't expecting company. At least not the kind that required pretenses. Do you usually let strangers in this easily? I asked as I stepped over the threshold. You're not a stranger anymore, she said simply. We ended up in her kitchen. It was the kind of space people put in magazines. Brushed gold fixtures, hanging herbs, floor-to-ceiling windows that framed the trees like art. But somehow it felt lived in. There was a mug with lipstick on the counter. A record playing low from the other room. She handed me a glass of water like we'd done this before. Then leaned against the island, watching me over the rim of her own glass. I'm still figuring out what this is, she said. I don't usually. Neither do I cut in. I didn't want her to apologize for something I hadn't even dared to hope for yet. She smiled. Then we're both off script. There was a pause. Heavy one. She tilted her head. Can I ask you something? Anything. What did you think when you first saw me? The truth sat on the tip of my tongue. I wanted to tell her she looked like wealth and grief had had a baby, and that baby had grown into the kind of woman who haunted dreams. I wanted to say she looked like someone who could ruin you gently. But I said, I thought you looked lonely. Her breath caught, barely, and her lips parted like she might say something. But instead she walked past me. Come, she said. I followed her into the living room, but she didn't sit this time. She moved to the record player and switched the vinyl to something slower, softer. Then she turned back toward me. Dance with me. It wasn't a question. The song filled the air like silk slipping across skin, and suddenly her arms were around me. One hand on my waist, the other finding my palm. I felt her breath near my neck as we swayed. Close, too close, not close enough. I used to dance in this room every night with him, she said quietly. Then I stopped. Until now. My heart twisted, but I didn't let go. Her cheek grazed mine. I don't want to be careful anymore, she whispered. And just like that, her lips were against mine. Low. Searching. It wasn't urgent. It wasn't desperate. It was something else entirely. Like she was trying to learn me one breath at a time. Like she hadn't touched someone in so long. She'd forgotten how to want gently. When we pulled apart, her eyes searched mine. Was that okay? I reached up and brushed a strand of silver hair from her face. It was perfect. And in that quiet, still moment I felt something shift. Not just in the air between us, but inside her. Like a door she had bolted shut long ago, was finally creaking open. Evelyn didn't ask me to leave that night. We didn't sleep together. Not in the way some stories end with tangled sheets and early morning regrets. Instead, she made tea, I took off my shoes, and we sat on the floor of her living room, leaning against the couch, shoulders brushing in the silence between our words. She told me about her husband. How he died suddenly, in a hotel room in Montreal, a heart that gave out before she did. How the sympathy calls eventually stopped, and how loneliness felt louder after the casseroles disappeared. I kept thinking grief would come like a wave, she said, eyes distant. But it's more like mist. You never notice it's soaked through you until one day you realize you're heavy. Listen. I didn't try to fix anything. I just let her talk. Because maybe that's what falling in love actually looks like. Knowing someone's shadows and not running from them. At one point, her head slipped to my shoulder. Her voice was barely a whisper when she said, "I haven't kissed anyone since him. Until you." I didn't move. I didn't need to. "I'm scared," she added, "of how easy it feels." I swallowed. "So am I." She pulled back just enough to look at me, fingers brushing my wrist. "Why did you really come here today?" It was a question that held more than curiosity. It held risk, vulnerability. "Because," I said, "you made me feel like I wasn't just delivering coffee. You looked at me like I was worth lingering for." She smiled then, the kind that starts slow and blooms wide, warming everything in its path. "I was," she whispered. "I still am. That was a week ago. Now I deliver coffee every morning. But I don't knock anymore." She leaves the door unlocked, and sometimes she's in the kitchen waiting, other times still wrapped in linen sheets, her hair messy, her eyes half asleep but always soft when they see me. We don't talk about labels. We don't define what this is with words. But her hand always finds mine when we pass each other. Her lips always find my shoulder when I sit too long at her dining table writing poems I'll pretend aren't about her. One morning I brought her usual, but I added a small pastry. Something sweet, something extra. She laughed as she opened the bag. "Trying to bribe me?" Shrugged. "Maybe." She leaned in, kissed my cheek. "Too late. I'm already yours." And just like that it was official. Not by declaration. Not by a grand gesture. But in the way her toothbrush now sat next to mine in the cup. In the way I started writing in her guest room that no longer felt like a guest room. In the way we touched each other's skin like we were writing verses neither of us had the courage to speak aloud. Evelyn, the rich widow with grief pressed into her bones, was no longer waiting behind closed doors. And me. I was never just the coffee girl.